Carlus's voice rose above the shrieking of Thyron's troops, yelling the signal that Branwyn had been waiting for. One of the beaked creatures had caught her by the wrist when the word reached her. It yanked her forward, opening its mouth too wide. The shifting grey presence within had entranced more than one of Branwyn's companions to their death, but now the sigil on her forehead let her mind turn the charm as easily as her metal skin turned claws. She spun into the monster's grip, let Yathana's edge take its head from its shoulders, and then, when she'd made a half circle, started running. She wasn't alone. A dozen others, soldiers stationed at Oakford and half-trained peasants who'd stayed to face the siege, kept pace, leading Thyron's troops on. They raced for the middle of the shattered town, where archers hid behind piles of rubble and the ground concealed a dozen sinkholes. The twisted men followed. Arrows did take some, and others stumbled, becoming easy marks for the archers' second volley or simply having to slow down, letting Branwyn and her companions gain a few precious feet of space. More to the point, they had followed, away from the rest of the troops, away from the walking abattoir that carried Thyron. Branwyn saw the construct off to the side as she turned to fight. It lurched onward, crushing the wounded beneath its rotting feet, and Amorous Var Fiena, Thyron's foe from 100 years before, charged forward to meet it. One of Thyron's wizards raised its boneless hands and sent a bolt of icy power screaming toward Branwyn. She threw herself sideways to avoid it, crashed against a pile of rubble, and staggered backwards, slashing out at a twisted man that was grabbing for her. She regained her footing in time to see Katherine, her fellow sentinel, and Sir Olvir, an earnest draught horse of a man who served the god of justice, rush Thyron's mount from behind. It staggered as two swords sank into the backs of its knees. In that instant, Amorous leapt with all his strength. His blade hit the center of the Colossus. Then 3 of the twisted men were on Branwyn. An arrow had taken out the wizard, thank the gods, and she turned her full attention to them. Yathana pierced the ribcage of the first with her usual ease, the metal of a soul sword divinely sharp, even when the inhabiting spirit wasn't present. One of the soldiers jabbed the second in the side with a spear. Not a fatal wound, but enough of a distraction that Branwyn had time to yank her sword free and plunge it into a more vital organ. She simply slammed her head into that of the third. Its gaping maw sought purchase on her face for a futile second before Branwyn's full weight hit it, knocking it backwards and into a hatchet that had only cut firewood a few days before. For a few heartbeats, the world was clear around her. The construct had collapsed into a pile of corpses. The air was heavy with blood and smoke, much of it acrid. Daya, who was immune to poison, had led a squad of the twisted men into a building and then set fire to a nasty packet of herbs. Branwyn inhaled deeply, anyhow. There were still too many of the twisted men, she realized. Only 8 of the people she'd led still remained. She knew that she had only a few more minutes until she became flesh again, with the enhanced strength and skill of any sentinel, but no more. And Thyron rose from the mountain of dead meat, glowing with sickly fire. Olvir and Katherine stood below him. They'd been helping Amorous to his feet, but now all 3 were still. Branwyn saw Daya start running toward them, and knew that she herself was too far away to possibly intervene. She was going to die. Everyone was going to die. There was nothing to say to the soldiers around her. There was nothing to do but face her death as bravely as she could. More twisted men were running toward them already. Branwyn braced herself, lifted Yathana, and saw the twisted men freeze in place, staring at the same multicolored radiance that Branwyn glimpsed from the corner of her own eye as it surrounded Katherine, Olvir, and Amorous. Thyron's flame froze too when it struck the shimmer, and then went hurtling back at its creator. They had a moment. Branwyn didn't know why, but she knew they'd better use it. She broke into a run, crossing the distance toward the nearest, still distracted twisted man, saving her breath but shouting a battle cry in her mind. From beyond Oakford's walls, she heard the clear, sonorous sound of a war horn. Reinforcements had arrived. Chapter 2. Star Palace of Heliodar, 5 months later.